I think the basic Ricardian model is as important and valid and useful as ever. I mean, the basic idea in that model is just that people are different, or firms are different, or land is different. Something is just different between the opportunities in one country and the opportunities in another country. And I think that's as true as it's ever been, if not more so. And we know more about that than ever. We see data nowadays on individuals and on firms and on other units of production, and everywhere we look we see immense heterogeneity, just huge differences, and the Ricardian model is a guide to thinking about how those differences matter for kind of who will do what. That's the sort of simple sorting, and also what will be its consequences. So that's sort of the implications for gains from trade. When there are differences we gain from trading, and the bigger are those differences, the bigger are the gains, and I think that's as true as ever. The logic behind that thinking, that industrial policy, industrial development view of trade, sort of basically just says that it's sort of a story where an industry or an activity, a collection of activities inside a country need opportunities to be sheltered, kind of to be temporarily large. And if they only have that temporary opportunity, then they'll be permanently large. And it could be because of learning, could be because of external economies of scale or other forms of externalities. And just sadly, the evidence we have on those phenomena are only really beginning to emerge. I mean, so another thing I would stress is that we whenever we think about options like that, we're always really asking, are those kind of externalities, those potentially large positive externalities, are they big in one activity or big in another activity? If they're big in everything, then then that would suggest there's no role for policy for temporary protection, because it sort of suggests that no matter what you do, you're always cutting back on the potential to enjoy some externality. And that's again something we just don't have the evidence base. So I wish I had a simple answer, but I just don't. Yeah. To me, the questions that I think are most important in international trade are really about how it all comes together. So think about that as sort of how it affects the opportunity to trade abroad and do other forms of integration abroad, like FDI or participating in value chains. The million-dollar question is, how does that affect aggregates like wages or prices or overall living standards for different types of people? And think of that as sort of how it all fits together. What we need is, I think most, is to develop empirical strategies so we can most effectively ask the data and gather the facts about how things come together. Sort of figuring out how it all adds up. Sort of think about that as going sort of from micro data to macro questions. And so for me, that's the hardest challenge that remains for us in the field of international trade, but also lots of other fields. We're often interested in the big questions, but we have the micro data and the micro variation to study. And the big question is, how does all that stuff on the ground aggregate up? And that's sort of the real challenge for both empirical work, like how we squeeze facts out of the data, and theoretical work, how we minimize the assumptions that are necessary to squeeze an understanding out of the data.